Hello, Gus again. I want to recap week 4 and the readings and discussions that we've had this week. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a couple of things to share with you. One moment. Thanks for bearing with me. So on screen here, I've got the success model from Heath and Heath's Made to Stick book. The book is chock full of examples that I think are fantastic. The examples that they show, that the two brothers show, to help you understand the difference between successful change initiatives and unsuccessful ones. Oftentimes, is how sticky the idea is. Right? Is it a change that people can readily grasp and adopt to and change their behaviors and to align with it, and then do they stick with that over time, or is it a change effort where people don't really understand what you expect from them? They kind of go around confused, they're angry, they're frustrated. They maybe adopt a few things here and there. They realize it's not going anywhere, and they start reverting back to the old way of doing things or finding a different workaround, and they undermine your change. And as we've seen from the research, about 80, if not more, percent of these change initiatives wind up failing because they lack stickiness. Really, that's what a lot of them come down to. They lack stickiness, and so that you don't follow through on the change to get everybody doing it and seeing the benefits of that change. So their book is really, I think, really helpful because it helps you understand and crystallize what makes an idea sticky enough that people will readily grab onto it, understand it clearly, and take action on it, and then continue with it uh, over time. And so their success model, as it's called, has these 6 principles associated with it. And I'm going to just blow those up a little bit bigger here. No, I can't, but I can do this. Move this out of the way a little, move that out of the way a little bit. Okay, so it makes it a little bit bigger, but you've seen these in the book. There's lots of good takeaways from the book, but I expect in your presentations, both of your presentations, that you're incorporating some elements of this Made to Stick book. It is a central reading for the course. So, you want your idea to be presented in a way that's simple, ideally something that's kind of unexpected, kind of surprising, catchy, right? But it's concrete, that people feel like this is the language that you're using is something that people can get their head around and kind of visualize in their minds. So what that change would look like, the ideas are they're presented credibly, and we've talked about from Cialdini's persuasion principles, the importance of authority, and other factors, other strategies and shortcuts, as they refer to them, for gaining credibility, right, and getting people to buy in from an emotional standpoint. And in making sure that your presentations are addressing the emotional aspect of change. That doesn't matter how good and strong and solid your rational business case is, if you don't also appeal to the emotions of your audience, your change is probably not going anywhere. So that includes the emotional needs of the senior leaders, the sponsors of the project that you're talking to in your business case presentation, as well as the audience, the targets that you're talking about in your change strategy presentation. So, and then the last thing here, which is I think actually one of the more important things, is the use of stories. How will you use stories to help you drive this change initiative forward, right? We are a storytelling species, human beings are. We've been telling stories since the beginning of our time on this planet. And this is how we've passed on knowledge to one another. It's how we've changed each other's minds about things and gotten each other to see things differently. Stories are central to defining who we are. We are storytellers, and we are story writers, and we are story livers. And so stories, very, very important. If you aren't taking advantage of storytelling in your change strategy, you're missing out on a really important and powerful technique the communication technique. So how will you incorporate these into your business strategy? I'd like to see that. I'd like to see these incorporated in there, and I'd like to see them incorporated into your change strategy in addition to your business case. So make sure that these are factored in, right? So anything else that you pull in from Heath and Heath and their Made to Stick book is fantastic, but make sure that you at least are pulling these in, right? Because that's central. The next thing I want to talk about is Daryl Connor's 4 roles. It was just a 2-minute video, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, but he basically said, look, there are 4 roles: sponsors, targets, agents, and advocates that they run into and that you typically see in organizational change initiatives. And so the sponsors, they're the people who are approving, putting their money and political support and whatever other support is needed behind a particular project, but they're not necessarily the ones who came up with the idea. They're not necessarily the ones who experience the consequences, the problems themselves, right? It could have been somebody in accounting bringing this to the CEO's attention. It could have been someone in HR bringing it to the CHRO's attention. It could be anybody, right? That comes up with the idea, but the sponsors are the ones who ultimately legitimize it and enable that idea to go beyond the water cooler, as I like to say, to actually put into action across the whole organization. So without your sponsors, you're not going anywhere. Getting the green light's all about getting your sponsors on board, but they're not the only ones that matter. Once you have your sponsors on board, you then have to figure out how you're going to get everybody else on board. And in particular, what Daryl Connor refers to as the targets of the change. Not everybody in the organization is affected by the change in the same way. Not all of them are being expected to change their behaviors. For some of them, the org change is just something that they should be aware of. It's just a passing thing for them. For others, it may have a small impact on them. You know, you may start to see this differently instead of that. You know, it's going to look like this now, and instead of doing this, you're going to do that. And it's a minor change for them. But for others, it could be a really significant change. And those are the ones that you really want to make sure you've targeted, hence their names, the targets of the organizational change. They're the ones who are most impacted by the change. They're really where the rubber meets the road on the change and where you really need to focus a lot of your attention in your change strategy. So when you're thinking about your solution set and you're thinking about your change strategy, it's your targets who are really going to be affected the most by that. And then there are the agents. In this case, it's you. You're the agent. You're the one driving this change initiative forward. You're the one leading the change initiative. It doesn't mean you're the leader of the organization. It doesn't mean you're the CEO. It means that usually those CEOs and senior leaders delegate the leadership of these change initiatives to people in middle management. And so it wouldn't be unusual once you're in middle management, the manager, director level person, where you are leading a change initiative for the whole organization. And so that's what it really means to be the agent. You're the agent of change. You're the one that's making it happen, even though you're not the one who approved it, funded it, supported it. You're maybe not even the one who came up with the idea in the first place. The advocates, those are people who are supportive of your change, actively supportive, because they're the ones who feel the pain of the organizational problem in the first place. They're the ones that, many of them are the ones who are going to be most vocal about the organizational problem, and they'll probably be the most supportive, the most enthusiastic about the solution, assuming that they like the solution that you've come up with, and you've listened to them in coming up with the solution. So the advocates are allies, really. Strategic partners is another term that gets used a lot in the field. They are your allies in this change initiative. So if you're the agent, your advocates are the allies that you're going to leverage to help you get the targets on board with the change you're trying to make. And sometimes, you know, some people may wear multiple hats, so don't get too caught up in that. Just understand that there are these different types of overall roles that people play within a change initiative, and you use them differently. So an advocate, you're going to approach very differently than you would a target, and their involvement in this change process is going to be very different, because the advocates, you're going to want them to not only support it but actively do things that will help get others on board, right? To promote it, to cheerlead it, to model it, etc. So anyway, so those are the 4 roles that Daryl Conner talks about. Other people have talked about different roles and stuff, but I think for simplicity's sake in our class, let's just stick to these 4 roles. And in your posts and in your project team work, try to focus on using these names for these different roles so that we can all make sure that we're all talking about the same thing, right? So that will help with our communication internally within the class and internally within your project team if you are talking about the same thing. Anyway, the next thing I want to talk about is the standard for change management, which is put out by the Association of Change Management Professionals. It's a nice document that they've put on their site that pulls in consensus views from change management experts across the field and around the world, but especially here in the U.S. And so it gives you some nice guidance in terms of what is it that we can all as change management people agree on. And so the section that I asked you to read was pages 20 to 36, which focus on organizational readiness assessment. As I talked about at the beginning of the week, org readiness assessment, something that we commonly do at the beginning of a major change initiative. For smaller change initiatives, you can kind of do it in your head because maybe not so many people are involved, like a couple of departments or something like that. But when you're talking about big org change initiatives, you're usually talking about the whole organization, the whole company, the whole agency, the whole command is involved in this and is affected in some way. And so you need to be able to break down those different groups, subgroups within that organization to figure out who's impacted, how they impacted, and how will they anticipate how they will react to the changes. And will they be allies or advocates? Will they be advocates? Are they targets that you need to focus your attention on? Or are they something else? Are they kind of indifferent? You know, they're just sort of hanging out, just watching the change as bystanders. But most folks in the organization will be impacted in some way. So the org readiness assessment is about figuring out how does it impact them differently and how they'll react. It also, in the document, you see that they also talk about some other things, the alignment with strategic initiatives, culture, groups, capacity, capabilities. They talk about other things in the document. So I won't bore you with that now. Make sure you've read through that and that you try to incorporate some of the standard for change management in your change strategy presentation in a couple of weeks. So, and I've showed you the change management worksheet that we use here at my company to analyze org readiness and to develop our change adoption plans so that we can target each of those different groups differently with different messaging, different strategies, different change strategies that are appropriate for them. So that's it. You know, so that's what our focus this week has been on org assessment. Hopefully you found the discussion helpful. Please make sure to continue to keep up with the readings and your discussion posts, and make sure that you're collaborating actively with your team to get that presentation, that first presentation done, the business case proposal presentation knocked out and ready to go, and then make sure that you're also beginning to think about and work on your change strategy presentation, because that one's coming up very soon as well. So thank you so much, and look forward to another good week. Take care.